Alrighty, thank you everyone for taking the time to tune in and watch this. We are going over, Michael and I, we're going to be going over the observation elicitation technique. And a little bit of what you can expect from this presentation is we're going to go over what even is observation, what are some of the advantages and disadvantages of observation. We're going to go over the recommendations of it, when to use it, how to use observation, and followed by the data. How can we take and apply observation to acquire data that we can then throw into our own project or projects that we may be working on? So to get started here, what is observation? Observation is a technique that is very effective at deciphering how a user gets their job done or performs their job. And the observer does this by conducting an assessment of the worker's work environment or the project work environment. There are some different types of observation techniques. There is complete participant observation. That is where the observer is 100% fully in the activity that they are observing in. And the observer takes time to study the situations where they're already a participant. This is an example of this would be a bus rider, where they take the time to study other bus riders and understand how their situations compare to his, since he is aware of the rules and of how things are being performed. Then there is active participant observation. This is where the observer seeks to do what others do to learn the rules of the activity or the project, or even the behavior that might be tied or associated with that project. An example of this is hunting and fishing. If an active observer would want to learn how to master those topics by doing it themselves, research, and then go out and be hands-on about it. Then you have moderate participation observation. This is where the observer looks to balance the participation that they are participating within this activity, and they want to balance that with their observational recording. They want to make sure that they can accurately record while also participating within that activity to gather data, so then they can record it. Then you have passive participant observation. This is where the observer is present at the scene, but they don't necessarily interact or participate with anybody around them. An example of this is a football game, right? If you go to a football game, you're not going to be jumping in to play football as an observer. You're going to watch and see how the teams interact with each other. So you're there, you're present, you're just not interacting with that project. And then last but not least, we have non-participation participant observation. And this is where the observer seeks to collect data without any sort of involvement from them. An example of this would be a soap opera. If someone wants to study the culture that is found within soap operas, they might not go on set and be active. They might just sit back and watch some television of those soap operas to then gather data that way and compare and contrast what their findings are. So they don't have to be at the scene to do this observation work. Some advantages of this is that by observing, it increases the observer's understanding of the project that they are choosing to observe. And through that observation, you gather data, you record the data, and then you can find ways to use that data. Another one is that if you have many observers that are seeking to observe a project, a general project, you'll see that they will have different perspectives on that project. And as a result, there will be different varying types of data, which might be easier and more beneficial to analyze and to come to a more determinate conclusion. And lastly, this technique, it's pretty flexible. It allows you to adjust to whatever level of observation is needed for the project you're studying. So I wouldn't go on set for the soap opera. I would just stay at home and watch television. You could do that with football games too, and you can do more non-participatory observations with those kinds of things. As opposed to, you want to see how someone does their job, you might want to be more hands-on and more proactive, following them, maybe repeating some of those project things for yourself as well to gain that understanding.
As for the disadvantages, the things that would prevent us from using this, The observation elicitation technique receives results proportional to time spent on observation. And right off the bat, if you think about it, this kind of makes sense. For instance, if you are observing someone for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, right? You might gain a lot of information, a lot of understanding or data. Maybe you don't, but it's not really going to compare to if you spend a day or a week or a month or a year. The longer you spend on observation, the better results you get out of it. And this is a good and a bad thing. But again, oftentimes the results are proportional to time spent. So this can be a time-consuming technique. Another disadvantage is actually kind of similar to what Chase mentioned on the last slide, and it's that the observer or the analyst, their opinions are kind of subjective and prone to misinterpretation. And as an advantage, this is fantastic. We want all sorts of different opinions. This provides a much fuller set of data, a lot of different viewpoints, a lot of different perspectives on the world can come from that. As a disadvantage, though, these misinterpretations can cause stumbling blocks. It can get in the way of progress or in the way of our project, for instance. Overall, it can have different perceptions on the world. Next slide. Our overall recommendation, though, is that there is a time and a place for everything. And this elicitation technique, it can be incredibly helpful in looking ahead and planning the design of our project, specifically in advance. For instance, if we want to do something, we should look at examples on how to do that, on how other people have done that. What did they do right? What did they do wrong? How can we tweak that to our advantage? Many companies and businesses, they do employ similar websites or apps to our own project. And this does make the observation technique very applicable and very beneficial. Next slide. So our example, the one that we picked, just to take a quick look at, is Domino's Pizza. On the right side, we have a quick picture. If you just Google Domino's Pizza and go to their website, this is what you would see. And as the observational elicitation technique, 3 questions that we might want to ask ourselves are, what do we like as we're observing? What do we not like as we're observing? And what can we do differently for ourselves, for our own project? So looking at this, let's ask ourselves that. What do we like? Well, right off the bat, I can tell you this. It's very easy to create an order because all over the place you see order now. And this is fantastic. We want it to be easy for people using our project or our product. We want it to be easy for them to use. We want it to be apparent and easy to learn. So that's fantastic. What do we not like? Well, I don't like that it kind of seems cluttered and I guess noisy, quote unquote, right? There's a lot of different colors. It's kind of bright. And in some cases, some things just seem to blend in. For instance, the choose any 2 or more, that kind of blends in the background there, right? It's kind of hard to read that. So I don't really like that. How can we use these differently in our own project? So blending the 2, we like that it's easy to create an order, and we don't like that it's noisy and cluttered. So what if we made a product that has easy access to all these different commands with delivery or carry out or ordering things or paying or anything that we would like it to do while maintaining an organized and sleek look? Overall, those are both fantastic options for us and things that we would probably want to implement in our own project. And this is just an example of perhaps how we would use the observational technique in our own research.
And so we talked about a lot of things. We talked about what is observation, when, how do we use it, what are some of the benefits, what are some of the drawbacks of using the observational technique, and it followed up with data that goes over what we initially want to do with our project. We pull that data from other sources, we take what we want and we discard what we don't want, and we put them together and put it towards what we would like to do for our own project. So thank you for taking the time to watch this video. If you have any questions, feel free to post a reply onto the thread of this video once it's posted. Again, thanks guys for taking the time to watch this.